pitcher nail down. I'm Jason Gilbo at JGilbo11, taking a look at pitching for tonight's 11-game slate. Chris Sale night, taking on the Yankees, a team that he's dominated this season. A couple other guys that we can look to use. I know there's a lot of expensive offenses that we want to target tonight, so I think maybe taking a flyer on a cheap pitcher or two in tournaments isn't a bad idea. We'll start with this first game here, Los Angeles and Baltimore. Kevin Gausman take on JC Ramirez. Gausman's on the cheaper side. He's been pitching pretty well. He did struggle against LA last time out before the Mariners start. Just 6 strikeouts over 5.1 innings, gave up 4 earned runs, gave up 10 base runners. That's a little bit of an issue for me. Obviously, this Angels team, it's not a pushover. They're not a good offense, but they're not a pushover one either, just in terms of strikeouts. But it was encouraging to see actually the 6 strikeouts that Gausman did have. Gausman's a GPP play for me tonight. I think there's a chance at a decent start in there. I think there is still some upside if Gausman has the strikeout stuff working, which he has of late. Strikeouts have been there. I mean, you look over his last 6 starts, he's had 6 or more strikeouts. I mean, before his last 2, he was on a good stretch of about 8 or more strikeouts. So I don't mind Gausman here in this spot. I mean, he's a decent home favorite, -146. So Los Angeles, a pretty low run total for being in that ballpark, right around 4.3. So Gausman's a GPP play. I don't mind him. His price tag is decent on both sides. DraftKings, obviously, I think SP2 kind of territories where you're going to be looking at. So moving on, no interest in JC Ramirez there tonight. But next game, Julio Teheran versus Robert Stevenson. Huge 4.5 run totals for both sides. Plus, no thank you to either of these pitchers, please. Arizona, Minnesota, Jose Berrios taking on Zach Greinke. Zach Greinke, for me, is a top option tonight. 13% swinging strike rate, 28.4% strikeout rate. Doesn't walk a lot of guys. Gets a Minnesota team that pretty middle of the road against right-handers. They also strike out quite a bit as well. 22.6% strikeout rate. We saw Godley kind of rack up the strikeouts last night. I like Arizona here to pick up a W. Greinke, once again, he's cheaper than Sale. I think a lot of people are going to be using him tonight for that discount, given the fact that he does have similar upside. So Greinke, he probably checks in points per dollar wise, maybe number 1 on the night, just in that department. Chris Sale, obviously, if pricing wasn't included, would be number 1, but Greinke here is in a really good spot, pitching really well, obviously away from home where hasn't been bad this year. He's had no issues at home, but 8 or 9 strikeouts in each of his last 4 starts. He's been dominant against good teams this year, so I expect him to kind of handle the Twins. On the other side of things, Jose Berrios, he's obviously kind of dropped off the map a little bit. Struggled against Detroit in his last time out. He had 6 earned. Hasn't really been walking a ton of guys. It's just been kind of a lot of timely home runs that have been unfortunate for him. I think this is actually a good GPP spot for him. He's extremely cheap. Berrios is a guy that does have some strikeout upside. Doesn't have a huge swinging strike rate this year, but he's not allowed a ton of hard contact. You look at his FIP and ERA. I mean, obviously things are a little bit up right now, just given the fact that he's getting up the long ball at a pretty high rate over his last few starts. But obviously this is an offense that does feature a decent amount of right-handers in their lineup. Berrios is pretty strong against righties. Obviously has to watch out for still Lamb and Peralta, but possibly Martinez is out of the lineup again tonight. That's a big loss. So kind of look at that back 5 guys there in that lineup. I think Berrios can actually have a fair amount of strikeout upside. Arizona struggles away from home, so those bats like Lamb and Peralta take a little bit of a dip in production. And like I said, Diamondbacks still strike out quite a bit against righties, 23.5%. So Berrios is definitely an interesting GPP option. If you're kind of looking to be, take a little bit of risk tonight. And one, you get some upside, but you also get a ton of salary to bring some bats in. So both pitchers definitely in play in that one. Greinke, all formats. Berrios definitely just GPPs. Miami, New York, Rafael Montero versus Vance Worley, 2 of the poor pitchers on this slate. High run total there, even though it's in a friendly ballpark. There's no real upside with either of these guys. We can pass. Next one here, you got Houston and Oakland. Colin McHugh take on Kendall Graveman. Kendall Graveman, no thank you. Colin McHugh, I have some interest in. He's been missing a lot of bats since he's come back. Obviously, he's a fly ball pitcher. That is something that is relatively scary. 50.6% fly ball rate already this year, 12.8% swinging strike rate, 23.7% strikeout rate. Oakland's a team, they do have some pop. I think that's kind of a little bit of an issue for me. Guys like Joyce, Chris Davis, Healy, Olsen, those guys all do have pretty big upside. But, you look here, I think McHugh, a home favorite, -161. Oakland right around a 4-run total. McHugh, really outside of one start this season against Chicago, when a lot of people put their trust in him, has been okay. I think he's going to be matchup dependent basically the rest of the way, and this is not a bad matchup for him, so I don't mind McHugh. More of an SP2 play than anything on tonight's slate. That's kind of how you're going to be looking at him. New York and Boston next here. CC Sabathia, no thanks. Chris Sale, obviously the only thing that's up with him is the enormous price tag. He's dominated. Obviously, the Yankees this year, he's dominated them all in his career. He leads the slate in just about every category possible. So, if you can fit him in, obviously, like Sale, I think Sale's obviously much more plausible over on FanDuel, where, he won the one pitcher and he's not quite as 14-1 range over there. So I think Sale's in play, but obviously you don't need to with Greinke being, cheaper. There's other options. There's tons of good offenses to target. So if you don't want to pay up that price, you definitely don't have to on the slate. He's not, the only option. So Cleveland, Kansas City next year. Trevor Bauer versus Jason Vargas. Trevor Bauer's been a guy who, strikeout rate has been phenomenal. Against Boston, he had 11. Against Colorado, 9. Against New York, 7. Against Los Angeles, 6. So, he's dialed up the strikeouts. He does have his blow-ups every now and then, but, Bauer's an interesting option. People are probably going to feel like he's overpriced. Obviously he's been in and out of the bullpen this year. He's made a couple of short starts. High risk, high reward at this price, but coming as a road favorite with how he's pitched and this Kansas City offense kind of starting to slow down a little bit again, might not be a bad time to get low ownership on him. Probably not a core play. He's more of a multiple lineup type ones. I think everyone that I've named so far that I've keyed in on I like more than Bowers, so he's definitely last on the list. As far as Jason Vargas goes, I don't have any interest in him here. Just cheap price and against this Indians team. Next game, you got Chicago and Texas. Martin Perez versus Derek Holland. We can make this one quick. No thank you to either of those guys. That's going to be my favorite game for offense. Next one here, Milwaukee, Colorado. Chad Bettis versus Brandon Woodruff. No thanks to either of these guys as well. Moving into Washington, San Diego, Travis Wood take on Steven Strasburg. Strasburg, obviously, his first game back, was on the right forearm issue, was hitting the DL. Obviously, he gets a dream matchup against, San Diego. I'm going to probably take a wait-and-see approach, not the fact that I don't think Strasburg is going to have a good outing. I just rather take Greinke. I'd rather go with some cheaper options and kind of hope for the same upside, because Strasburg is not a guy that I expect them to just, go out and fully have 100 pitches and pitch against the San Diego team. And Strasburg's not someone who pitches deep into games all the time. So I know this year he traded in a little bit of strikeout for contact, and he's been pitching into the 7th a little bit more than usual. But I don't know if we get that same sharpness here on the first day back. So I'm going to take a wait-and-see approach. The upside's obviously there against the Padres, who strike out, quite a bit against righties. But I'm just not going to go that route tonight and kind of wait to start. So on the other side, Travis Wood, no interest from me there. He's super cheap. Giants and Phillies, Ty Blatch for Sherrod Eichhoff. These two guys just might be average enough for me to actually not use them on tonight's slate. I don't think there's a ton of upside with either of these guys. Blatch is not a strikeout pitcher. I know at times we've seen him, rack up some strikeouts. He did it against San Diego, did against Colorado, but I don't think we're going to get a ton here. So I'm going to pass on these last few pitchers. So, Sale, Greinke, obviously headline your top options, but I do think Gausman, Berrios, McHugh, Bauer are kind of your cheaper guys that you can look to use tonight and get some upside with. So that's going to wrap it up. You can head over to DaveFantasyGuy.com, check out the great tools and content.